My name is Paige Foster. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a corporate attorney in Boston. 3 weeks ago, my mother stood at my brother's rehearsal dinner with a microphone in her hand, ready to announce to 50 guests that I was no longer part of our family. My crime? Refusing to pay $50,000 for a wedding I wasn't even in. But that's not the real story. The real story started 15 years earlier, on a rainy October night when I was 17, and everything changed. A car accident, my brother in the hospital, and a guilt so heavy I've carried it every single day since, until I discovered the truth they'd been hiding from me all along. Before I tell you what happened when my mother reached for that microphone and what I pulled from my bag in response, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. I'd also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. There's something comforting about knowing I'm not alone in this. Here's what you need to understand. I've spent half my life believing I destroyed my brother's future. I've paid for it in every way possible, emotionally, financially, and in the quiet shame that follows you into every family gathering. My mother made sure I never forgot. My father's silence confirmed it, and my brother's injuries were the evidence I couldn't argue with. But 3 weeks before his wedding, when my mother demanded that $50,000 as the least I could do, something inside me finally broke. Not in the way you might think, not with anger or rebellion. It broke open, and in that opening, I started asking questions I should have asked 15 years ago. What I found changed everything. So let me take you back to where this really started. Not to the accident, but to 3 weeks before the wedding, when my mother called and made a demand that would finally force me to stop running from the past and start facing it head on. The call came on a Tuesday evening while I was reviewing contracts in my apartment. Mom's name lit up my phone, and I hesitated before answering. Our conversations always followed the same script, surface-level pleasantries masking deeper resentments. Paige? Her voice was crisp, businesslike. We need to discuss Jason's wedding. Of course, I said, setting down my pen. I'm looking forward to it. When do you need me there for? The wedding is going to be expensive, she cut in. Your father and I are doing everything we can, but Jason deserves something special, after everything he's been through. There it was, the familiar weight settling onto my shoulders. Mom, I've already sent a generous gift, and I'm paying for my own travel. $50,000. I blinked. What? We need you to contribute $50,000 toward the wedding expenses. Her tone was matter-of-fact, as if she'd asked me to pick up milk. It's the least you can do, Paige. You took so much from him. His scholarship, his health, his confidence, 2 years of physical therapy because of your carelessness. My throat tightened. Mom, I've helped the family financially for years. The down payment on your mortgage refinance, Dad's surgery, That was your obligation, not generosity. Her words were ice. This is different. This is about Jason. This is about making things right. I don't have that kind of money just sitting around, I said, which wasn't entirely true, but the amount was staggering. You're a lawyer in Boston. Don't pretend you can't afford it. She paused. $50,000, Paige, or don't bother coming to the wedding. The line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling 17 again, small, guilty, and completely powerless. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mother's words echoed in the dark, pulling me back to the night that had defined my entire adult life. I was 17, a senior in high school with a perfect GPA and college acceptance letters piling up. Jason was 12, all energy and enthusiasm, living for his travel soccer team. That October evening, I'd picked him up from practice. Mom and Dad were at a dinner party. It was raining, the kind of steady downpour that turns roads into mirrors. Can we get burgers? Jason asked, bouncing in the passenger seat, still in his muddy cleats. Mom said to come straight home, I replied, but I was smiling. Maybe next time. The road down Miller's Hill was steep, winding. I'd driven it 100 times. I was going the speed limit, hands at 10 and 2 like Dad taught me. Then, halfway down, I pressed the brake pedal. Nothing happened. I pressed harder. The pedal went straight to the floor. The car kept accelerating down the wet slope. Paige? Jason's voice was small. It's okay, I said, but panic was rising in my throat. I pumped the brakes. Nothing. I yanked the emergency brake. The car fishtailed, and I lost control completely. The utility pole came out of nowhere. The impact threw us forward. Airbags exploded, Jason screamed, then silence, except for the hiss of the radiator and the rain hammering the roof. Jason was conscious but crying, his leg bent at a wrong angle. I had a cut on my forehead, blood running into my eyes. Police came. Ambulance, hospital lights, my parents arriving, my mother's face white with terror. I remember a police officer saying something about mechanical failure, but I was in shock, barely processing words. What I remember most clearly was my mother in the hospital hallway, not looking at me, saying to my father, "She was going too fast. She wasn't paying attention." And I believed her. That weekend, I drove to my parents' house in Connecticut. Mom had insisted on a family meeting to discuss wedding details. I arrived Saturday morning with a knot in my stomach and a box of pastries as a peace offering. Jason and his fiancée Melissa were already there, sitting at the dining table surrounded by wedding magazines and fabric swatches. Jason looked up and smiled. Genuine, warm. "Hey, sis!" I hugged him, relieved. "Congratulations again. Melissa, everything looks beautiful." Melissa, petite with kind eyes, squeezed my hand. "We're so glad you're here." Mom swept in from the kitchen, Dad trailing behind her. "Paige, good. You're on time. Sit down." We made small talk about the venue, the menu, the flowers. Then Mom set down her coffee cup with a deliberate clink. "Paige, have you thought about what we discussed?" My chest tightened. "Mom, can we talk about this privately?" "No need for privacy." Her smile was sharp. "Everyone here knows what you owe this family." Jason shifted uncomfortably. Melissa looked down at her hands. Dad studied his plate as if it held the secrets of the universe. "I've been thinking about it," I said carefully. "But $50,000 is what you owe Jason," Mom interrupted. "After what you did to him, after what you took from him, his scholarship to state, 2 years of his life in physical therapy, the trauma." "Mom," Jason started. "No, Jason. You're too forgiving." She turned back to me. "You've had 15 years to build your career, Paige. 15 years that Jason had to spend recovering from your mistake. This is your chance to make it right." I looked at my father, silently begging for support. He cleared his throat, then looked away. That's when I knew I was alone in this. I drove back to Boston in silence, my mind racing through scenarios like a lawyer preparing for trial. Except this time, I was both the attorney and the defendant. In my apartment that night, I pulled up my bank statements and retirement accounts. $50,000. It was possible. Barely. It would wipe out most of my emergency fund and a chunk of my savings. A year of careful budgeting gone. But it wasn't really about the money. If I paid, I would be confirming what my mother had always claimed, that I owed them. That my success was built on Jason's suffering, that I would never be free of that debt because there would always be another demand, another reminder, another way to keep me tethered to my guilt. If I didn't pay, Mom would make good on her threat. She'd tell everyone at the wedding, extended family, Jason's friends, colleagues from his accounting firm. Some of those people were connected to my professional network. The story would spread. Paige Foster, the selfish sister who refused to help her brother after ruining his life. I'd lose my connection to Jason. We'd grown closer over the past few years, careful conversations that avoided the minefield of the past. He was the only family member I still loved without reservation. Worse, I'd be confirming my mother's narrative, that I was selfish, ungrateful, still the careless teenager who'd hurt her brother. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, staring at the numbers. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic. This wasn't about $50,000. It was about control. It was about keeping me in my place, forever guilty, forever paying, forever less than. The question was, what was I willing to sacrifice to break free? 2 days later, I called Jason. He answered on the third ring, slightly out of breath. Paige, hey, sorry, just got back from a run. What's up? I paced my living room, phone pressed to my ear. Jason, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. His tone shifted, cautious. Do you actually want me to pay $50,000 for your wedding? Silence. Then, Paige, I didn't ask for that. Mom just... She thinks it's fair. Fair? I stopped pacing. Jason, you're doing great. You have a successful career. You're getting married. What did you really lose? I lost 2 years of rehab, Paige. His voice was quiet but firm. I lost my scholarship to state. I lost... The insurance covered all the medical bills. I checked. And you got a better scholarship to Northeastern a year later. You graduated with honors. That's not the point. Then what is the point? I pressed. Because from where I'm standing, I've spent 15 years apologizing for something that happened when I was a kid. I've helped Mom and Dad financially more times than I can count. And now I'm supposed to bankrupt myself to prove I'm sorry? You're not bankrupting yourself. You're a lawyer. That's what Mom said. Another silence. Then Jason sighed. Look, I don't want to argue about this. Mom says you owe us. I don't know all the details about money and insurance. I just know what happened that night changed my life. It changed mine too, I said softly. I don't want drama at my wedding, Paige. Just do what Mom asks, okay? For me. The line went dead before I could respond. I stood there, phone in hand, realizing that Jason wasn't my enemy, but he wasn't my ally either. He'd believed the family story for too long to question it now. The texts started the next morning. Mom. Have you made the transfer yet? I ignored it. By afternoon, another arrived. Mom. Jason's counting on you. Don't let him down again. I was in a client meeting when my phone buzzed with the third message. Mom. Your father is very disappointed. That evening I finally responded. Mom, I need more time to think about this. Her reply was instant. There's nothing to think about. You owe us. Over the next week, the messages came daily, sometimes twice a day. Mom. Don't embarrass us, Paige. Mom. This is about family, or doesn't that matter to you? Mom. 2 weeks until the rehearsal dinner. I tried to reason with her. I've helped this family for years. I paid $15,000 for Dad's surgery. I covered 6 months of your mortgage payments when Dad was out of work. Mom. That was separate. This is about Jason, about what you did to him. Mom, this isn't fair. Mom. Fair? You want to talk about fair after what you did? The messages were like water torture, constant, relentless, wearing me down. I started dreading the buzz of my phone. Each notification was another weight added to the guilt I'd carried since I was 17. A week before the wedding, the final message arrived. Mom. You have until the rehearsal dinner to make this right. After that, everyone will know what kind of daughter you are, what kind of sister you are. I'll make sure of it. I stared at the screen, hands shaking. This was it. The ultimatum. Pay up or be publicly shamed in front of 50 people. Family, friends, Jason's colleagues, some of whom knew my clients, some of whom moved in my professional circles. I had 7 days to decide who I was going to be. The next day, I met my best friend Sarah at our usual coffee shop in Cambridge. Sarah was a social worker who'd heard every family dysfunction story imaginable. If anyone could give me perspective, it was her. I told her everything: the accident, the 15 years of guilt, the demand for $50,000, the threats. Sarah listened without interrupting, her hands wrapped around her latte. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Paige, this is financial abuse," she said finally, "and emotional blackmail." I blinked. "That's a strong word." "It's the accurate word." She leaned forward. "Your mother is using guilt and public shame to extort money from you. That's not a family disagreement. That's abuse." "But what if I'm wrong?" The question tumbled out before I could stop it. "What if I really did ruin Jason's life? What if—" "Did you?" Sarah's gaze was steady. "Or did they tell you that so many times you believed it?" I opened my mouth to respond, then closed it. I didn't know how to answer. "Paige, I want you to do something for me." Sarah pulled out her phone. "I want you to get the police report from that accident. The actual official report. Not what your parents told you. Not what you remember through the lens of trauma. The facts." "It was 15 years ago. Police reports are public record. You can request a copy." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Get the facts, then decide. But stop carrying guilt for something you might not have done." I drove home with Sarah's words echoing in my head. The facts. When was the last time I'd looked at the actual facts instead of the story I'd been told? That night, I Googled the county records office. They were open until 4 on weekdays. I had 5 days until the rehearsal dinner. The county records office was in a squat brick building 20 minutes from my parents' house. I took a half day off work, telling my assistant I had a personal matter to handle. The clerk behind the counter looked bored. "How can I help you?" "I need a copy of a police report from 15 years ago. October 2010. Single vehicle accident on Millers Hill Road." She typed slowly into her computer. "Name?" "Paige Foster. I was the driver." More typing. The clock on the wall ticked. My heart hammered. "Found it. That'll be $15 for the copy." My hands trembled as I handed her my credit card. She disappeared into a back room. 5 minutes felt like an hour. When she returned, she handed me a manila envelope. "Have a good day." I walked to my car on autopilot, the envelope burning in my hands. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at it. This was it. The truth I'd been too afraid to look for. The facts that Sarah said I needed. I almost started the car and drove away without opening it. Instead, I tore open the seal. The report was 3 pages, typed on official letterhead. I skipped past the basic information: date, time, location, weather conditions, until I found the section labeled "Cause of Accident." The words blurred, then sharpened. Cause of accident: brake failure due to manufacturing defect in brake line assembly. Vehicle inspection revealed complete brake fluid loss from defective connection. Driver not at fault. No citation issued. Vehicle towed for evidence in potential product liability case. I read it again, then a third time. Not at fault. Manufacturing defect. No citation issued. 15 years. 15 years of guilt, of apologizing, of believing I destroyed my brother's life. And it was never my fault. My hands shook so badly I dropped the papers. They scattered across the passenger seat, evidence of a truth my parents had never told me. The question was, did they know? I drove straight to my parents' house. Mom's car wasn't in the driveway. She'd be at her book club. Dad's truck was parked in the garage. I found him in his workshop, sanding a piece of wood for one of his furniture projects. He looked up when I entered, surprise crossing his face. "Paige? I thought you were in Boston." I held up the police report. "Did you know about this?" He set down the sandpaper. His face went pale. "Paige, did you know?" My voice cracked. "Did you know it wasn't my fault?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "It was complicated." "That's not an answer." "The insurance company," he rubbed his face. "If they'd known it was a manufacturing defect, they would have investigated the dealer. Your mother's cousin sold us that car. It would have been a lawsuit, a mess, family drama." I stared at him. "So you let me believe I ruined Jason's life for 15 years?" We thought it was easier this way. You were young, you'd move on. Move on? I laughed, a harsh sound. Dad, I've spent my entire adult life trying to make up for something I didn't do. I chose my career based on making enough money to help this family. I've sent you thousands of dollars. I've apologized at every family gathering. And you knew the whole time. Your mother needed someone to blame. His voice was barely a whisper. Jason was hurt. She was scared. She needed it to make sense. So you sacrificed me to make her feel better? He finally looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before: shame. I'm sorry, Paige, but please don't bring this up now. Not at Jason's wedding. It'll destroy your mother. I folded the report carefully and put it back in my bag. I'm not the one who destroyed anything, Dad. That evening, I remembered Daniel Brennan. He'd been our family attorney for 20 years, handled wills, property transfers, minor legal matters. He'd known me since I was a teenager, and according to the wedding invitation, he'd be at the rehearsal dinner. I called his office the next morning. Paige Foster. His voice was warm when he answered. I haven't heard from you in ages. How's the corporate law world treating you? It's good, Daniel. Listen, I need to talk to you about something. It's personal, family related. His tone shifted. Of course. I have an opening this afternoon at 3. His office was in a renovated brownstone, lined with law books and framed degrees. He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. What's going on? I told him the story, the accident, the years of guilt, my mother's demand for $50,000, and finally, the police report I'd just discovered. I slid it across his desk. Daniel read it carefully, his expression growing more serious with each line. When he finished, he set it down and looked at me. This is very clear. You were not at fault. And if your parents knew this and still demanded money from you based on false pretenses, that's financial coercion. What can I do? Legally, you don't owe them anything. Not morally, not financially. This report exonerates you completely. He paused. But I assume you're not here for legal advice. You're here because you're trying to decide what to do at the wedding. I nodded. I'll be at the rehearsal dinner, he said quietly. If you need someone to verify this document, someone with legal standing to confirm its authenticity, I'm here. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. Thank you, Daniel. The truth is on your side, Paige. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for defending yourself. The rehearsal dinner was held at Riverside Manor, an elegant restaurant overlooking the Connecticut River. 50 guests filled the private dining room: Jason's friends from college, Melissa's extended family, aunts and uncles I hadn't seen in years, and a handful of Jason's colleagues from the accounting firm where he worked. I arrived exactly on time, wearing a simple navy dress and carrying a small leather bag. Inside that bag was the police report, folded carefully in a manila envelope. The room buzzed with conversation and laughter. White tablecloths, flickering candles, the clink of wine glasses. A celebration. Jason spotted me first. He crossed the room, handsome in his suit, and pulled me into a hug. You came. Of course I came. I'm your sister. Melissa joined us, radiant in a cream-colored dress. Paige, I'm so glad you're here. You look beautiful. We made small talk about the ceremony tomorrow, the weather forecast, the honeymoon plans to Costa Rica. Normal conversation, safe conversation, as if there wasn't a bomb ticking in my purse. Mom swept through the room like a queen greeting her subjects. She wore burgundy silk and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. When she saw me, the smile froze. Paige, you're here. I wouldn't miss Jason's wedding. We'll see about that. She moved past me to greet other guests. Dad stood near the bar, nursing a scotch. He caught my eye and looked away quickly. I found my assigned seat, table 6, near the back. Not with family. A statement in itself. Daniel Brennan was seated at table 4. He gave me a small nod of acknowledgement. I set my bag on the chair beside me, feeling the weight of what was coming. Around me, people laughed and toasted. None of them knew that in the next hour, everything would change. Dinner was served, salmon, roasted vegetables, conversation flowing easily. I barely tasted the food. My attention was fixed on Mom, who circulated through the tables, playing the perfect hostess. After dessert, she moved to the front of the room and picked up the microphone. The conversations quieted. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here to celebrate Jason and Melissa." Her voice was smooth, practiced. "We're so grateful to have you all as we come together as a family." She launched into a speech about Jason, his childhood, his determination, his success despite obstacles. The room listened, rapt. Many of you know that Jason faced significant challenges as a teenager. A car accident when he was just 12 years old left him with serious injuries. He lost his scholarship opportunity. He spent 2 years in physical therapy. My stomach dropped. She was doing it, right now. But Jason never gave up. He worked hard, he persevered. And look at him now, successful, happy, about to marry this wonderful woman. Applause. Jason looked uncomfortable but smiled. Mom's gaze landed on me. And tonight, I want to acknowledge someone who's been part of that journey. My daughter, Paige. 50 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I felt my face flush. Paige has done well for herself. A lawyer in Boston. Very successful. She paused. And we've been discussing how she might want to contribute to Jason's wedding, to show her support for her brother. The room was silent now. Confused glances between guests. "Paige, you and I talked about a financial contribution to help with the wedding expenses. Have you made that transfer?" My hands gripped the edge of the table. This was it, the public execution. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for my answer. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. The sound echoed in the silent room. "Mom, I think this conversation should be private." "No, Paige." Her smile was steel. "Everyone here is family. They deserve to know." My voice stayed calm, professional, the voice I used in boardrooms. "I've supported this family for years. I paid for Dad's surgery when insurance wouldn't cover it. I helped with mortgage payments. I've been there for Jason." "That was your obligation," she said smoothly. "This is different. This is about making things right. I don't owe you $50,000. Gasps rippled through the room. Whispers started immediately. I saw Melissa's mother lean toward her husband, murmuring. Jason's face had gone red. Mom's expression hardened. "After what you did to Jason, you don't think you owe him?" "What I did?" I took a breath. "Mom, let's talk about what really happened." "Everyone knows what happened." Her voice rose slightly. "You were careless. You were driving too fast. You hurt your brother. He lost everything because of your recklessness." "That's not the whole truth." The room was electric now. People had stopped pretending not to listen. This was better than any reality TV show, a real family drama unfolding in real time. "What are you suggesting?" Mom's knuckles were white around the microphone. "That you're not responsible? That Jason's injuries weren't your fault?" "I'm suggesting that there's more to the story than what you've been telling people for 15 years. Jason stood up. "Paige, please." But Mom cut him off. "If you're not willing to support your brother, Paige, then maybe you shouldn't be here. Maybe you're not part of this family. Are you asking me to leave?" "I'm saying that family means sacrifice. And if you can't do that, then you're not family." The room held its breath. I could feel the weight of 50 people watching, judging, trying to figure out who was right and who was wrong. Mom turned to address the guests, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she wanted sympathy. "I apologize for this disruption. My daughter has always been difficult when it comes to taking responsibility." "Mom, that's not fair." "Fair?" She spun back to me. "You want to talk about fair? Your brother spent 2 years learning to walk properly again. 2 years of his childhood. Gone. And you've spent 15 years building a career, living in a nice apartment, traveling. You've had everything he lost. That's not true, I said quietly. Jason has a great career. He's happy. He's successful. Because he worked twice as hard to overcome what you did to him. Her voice cracked with emotion. Real or performed, I couldn't tell anymore. And now, when he's finally having his moment, you can't even do this one thing for him? Jason stood again, his voice strained. Mom, please, let's not do this now. No, Jason, you've been too kind to her, too forgiving. She looked back at the crowd. My daughter has refused to help her brother after everything he's been through because of her. She has the money. She just doesn't care enough to do the right thing. I saw it then, the shift in some people's faces, disappointment, judgment. My Aunt Margaret shook her head sadly. One of Jason's groomsmen whispered something to his date. Mom held the microphone like a weapon. So, Paige, what will it be? Are you family, or are you not? This was the moment, the point of no return. I reached for my bag. I know this is a lot to take in. It was for me too. If you're feeling the same shock and anger I felt in that moment, please hit the like button and subscribe. I want to hear your thoughts. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? Drop your story in the comments below. And stick with me, because what happened next at that rehearsal dinner was something I never could have imagined. Now, back to what happened when I reached into my bag. I opened my bag and pulled out the manila envelope. My hands were steady now. Funny how clarity feels once you stop running from the truth. I am family, Mom, but I won't be manipulated anymore. I removed the police report and held it up so the room could see the official letterhead. This is the police report from the accident 15 years ago. The official report that I only saw for the first time last week. Mom's face went pale. Paige, this isn't the time. This is exactly the time. I opened the report and read aloud, my voice clear and professional. Cause of accident, brake failure due to manufacturing defect in brake line assembly. Driver not at fault. No citation issued. Complete silence. Not a fork clinked. Not a chair shifted. I wasn't careless, I continued. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't speeding. The car had a defective brake line. The brakes failed completely. I was 17 years old and I did everything I could to avoid that crash. I looked around the room, meeting eyes. I was never at fault. The police knew it. The insurance company knew it. And I've spent 15 years believing I destroyed my brother's life when it was never, ever my fault. Jason's face was frozen in shock. Melissa had her hand over her mouth. Mom tried to recover. Paige, you're taking this out of context. There's no context that changes these facts. I held up the report again. This is an official police document. It's a matter of public record. Anyone in this room can request a copy and verify every word. I turned to face her fully. You knew, didn't you, Mom? You knew it wasn't my fault, and you let me carry that guilt anyway. Daniel Brennan stood from his table. May I see that, Paige? I walked over and handed him the report. The room watched as he examined it, his lawyer's eyes scanning every line. He nodded slowly. This is an official police report from the Connecticut State Police. His voice carried the authority of 30 years practicing law. It's clear and unambiguous. The accident was caused by a mechanical defect in the vehicle's brake system. The investigating officer determined that the driver, Paige, was not at fault. No citation was issued. He looked at my parents. Eleanor, Richard, did you both know about this? Dad stared at his plate. Mom's mouth opened, then closed. This is a family matter, Daniel, Mom finally said, her voice tight. It's not your concern. Actually, Eleanor, it is my concern. Daniel's tone was firm, but not unkind. I'm your family attorney, and if you've been demanding money from Paige based on false information you knew was false, that's not a family disagreement. That's coercion. More whispers. I saw several people pulling out their phones, probably Googling whether what Daniel said was true. My Uncle Tom, Dad's brother, stood up. Eleanor, is this true? Did you know Paige wasn't at fault? It was complicated, Mom said, but her voice had lost its certainty. The insurance, the dealer was family. We didn't want... So you let your daughter believe she was responsible? Tom's voice was incredulous. For 15 years? We did what we thought was best for the family, Dad said quietly, finally speaking. We were trying to protect. Protect who? I asked. Because it wasn't me. The room erupted in conversation. Some people were angry, some confused. Some were looking at my parents with disappointment I'd never seen before. Jason sat frozen, staring at the table in front of him. Jason stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. His face was flushed, his hands shaking. Paige, his voice cracked. Is this true? I nodded, tears threatening for the first time. I just found out last week. I never knew, Jason. I thought it was my fault. I've thought that for 15 years. He turned to Mom, and I saw something break in his expression. Mom, did you know? Jason, sweetheart, it was complicated. The insurance situation. Did you know? Each word was deliberate, hard. Mom's silence was answer enough. Oh my God, Jason's hand went to his forehead. You let her think, all this time, you let Paige think she ruined my life? You were hurt, Mom said, her voice desperate now. I needed the truth. Jason's voice rose, something I'd rarely heard. I needed my sister, and you took that from both of us. He crossed the room to me, and I saw tears in his eyes. Paige, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. I know you didn't. My voice was barely a whisper. All those years, all those times Mom brought it up, made you feel guilty. He shook his head. I never asked for that. I never wanted that. Melissa appeared beside him, her hand on his arm. She looked at me with something like horror. Paige, I had no idea. No one told me any of this. It's okay, I said, though nothing felt okay. Jason looked back at our mother. I never wanted her money, Mom. I never asked for any of this. You did this. You created this whole thing. Mom stood rigid, her face a mask, but I could see the cracks forming. Around us, the whispers grew louder. Can you imagine carrying that guilt for 15 years, only to find out it was never yours to carry? If this story is hitting home for you, please like this video and subscribe. It really helps me share more stories like this. And tell me, would you have confronted your family publicly or handled it privately? I'm genuinely curious about your perspective. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Now, let me tell you what happened next. I turned back to my mother. The room was still buzzing, but I needed to say this. For me. Mom, I love you, but I won't let you control me with guilt anymore. Her eyes flashed. Paige, you're being dramatic. No, I'm being honest. My voice was calm, steady. I've spent 15 years trying to earn your forgiveness for something I didn't do. I've sent you money. I've apologized at every holiday. I've made my career choices based on being able to support this family. That ends tonight. You're going to throw away your family over this? Her voice wavered between anger and desperation. I'm not throwing away anything. I'm setting boundaries. I looked around the room, then back at her. You knew the truth, Mom. Dad knew the truth. And you chose to let me suffer because it was easier than dealing with the real situation. We were protecting the family, Dad said quietly. Your mother's cousin, the dealer. You were protecting your reputation, I corrected, at my expense. I took a breath. I won't pay you $50,000. I won't pay you anything. Because I don't owe you. I never did. I turned to Jason. But I will be here for you. I will be here for my family, on my terms, with boundaries. Jason nodded, tears streaming down his face. I want you at my wedding, Paige, as my sister, not as someone who owes me, just my sister. Then I'll be there. I smiled at him, the first genuine smile I'd felt in weeks. Congratulations, Jason. I'm happy for you. Melissa stepped forward and hugged me. Thank you for being honest, and thank you for being here for Jason. I looked at my mother one more time. I'm not walking away from this family. but I'm walking away from the guilt you've used to control me. Mom stood frozen, the microphone still in her hand. Her face had gone from pale to flushed, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. "You're making a scene," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You made the scene, Eleanor." It was my Uncle Tom again. He stood, his expression hard. "You brought this up publicly. You tried to shame Paige in front of all of us, and now we know the truth." Other people started standing. My Aunt Margaret came to my table, putting her hand on my shoulder. "Honey, I'm so sorry, I never knew." One of Melissa's aunts approached Mom. "Eleanor, I think you owe your daughter an apology." "This is none of your business," Mom snapped. "You made it everyone's business when you brought it up here," the woman replied coolly. Dad finally stood, setting down his scotch glass. "Eleanor, he's right. We were wrong. We should have told Paige the truth." Mom whirled on him. "Don't you dare turn on me now." "I'm not turning on you." His voice was tired. "But we were wrong, and Paige deserves better than what we've given her." For the first time in my life, I saw my mother speechless. She looked around the room, at the disapproving faces, the whispers, the judgment she'd tried to direct at me now reflected back at her. Without another word, she set down the microphone and walked out of the dining room. The door swung shut behind her. Dad looked at me, his eyes red. "I'm sorry, Paige. I should have stood up for you a long time ago." I nodded, not trusting my voice. The room slowly came back to life. Conversations resumed, quieter now, but the energy had shifted. The truth was out, and there was no putting it back. Over the next hour, people approached me in waves, some I barely knew, some I hadn't seen since I was a teenager. My Aunt Sarah, Mom's sister, hugged me tightly. "I never knew the whole story. I'm so sorry you went through this alone." "It's okay," I said, though it wasn't. Not really. "It's not okay." She pulled back, her eyes fierce. "Your mother had no right to do that to you, none." One of Jason's groomsmen, a guy named Marcus I'd met once before, shook my head. "That took guts. Standing up like that. I respect it." Melissa's mother, an elegant woman in her 60s, took my hands. "I want you to know that you're welcome in our family. What your mother did was wrong. You didn't deserve that." The words kept coming. Support I'd never expected. Validation I'd never received. Daniel Brennan found me near the bar. "You handled that with remarkable grace, Paige. I'm proud of you." "I almost didn't do it," I admitted. "I almost just paid her and stayed quiet." "But you didn't. You chose the truth. That's never the easy choice, but it's always the right one." Dad approached hesitantly. "Paige, can we talk? Tomorrow, maybe?" "Maybe," I said. "I need some time, Dad." He nodded, understanding. "I'll wait as long as you need." Jason found me as people were starting to leave. He pulled me into another hug, this one longer, tighter. "I love you, Paige, and I'm sorry for everything." "I love you too." I held on to my little brother, the person I'd spent 15 years believing I'd hurt, and felt something loosen in my chest. For the first time in 15 years, I felt like I could breathe. Not because I'd won, because I was finally free. The wedding took place the next day as planned. I almost didn't go. I sat in my hotel room that morning, staring at my bridesmaid dress. I wasn't in the wedding party, but I'd bought something nice, and wondered if my presence would make things worse. Jason called at 9 a.m. "Please come, please, I need you there." So I went. The ceremony was at a small chapel surrounded by gardens. The same guests from the night before filled the pews, but the energy was different. Quieter. More genuine somehow. Mom was there, sitting in the front row with Dad. She wore a lavender dress and a carefully neutral expression. When I entered, she looked away. Dad caught my eye and gave a small nod. Not quite an apology, but acknowledgement. I sat near the back, next to my Aunt Sarah. When Jason and Melissa exchanged vows, I cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. My brother was happy. He was whole, and I hadn't destroyed him. At the reception, Jason made sure to spend time with me. He introduced me to his friends, not as my sister who was in the accident, but simply as my sister Paige. She's a lawyer in Boston. No qualifiers, no guilt, just family. Melissa danced with me during the open dance portion. Thank you for coming, and thank you for yesterday. I know it was hard. It needed to happen, I said. Jason told me he wants to rebuild your relationship, really rebuild it. No more guilt, no more walking on eggshells. I'd like that. Mom kept her distance all day. A few times I caught her watching me, her expression unreadable. But she didn't approach, and I didn't seek her out. Some bridges take longer to rebuild than others. Some might never be rebuilt at all. And I was learning to be okay with that. In the weeks after the wedding, I heard things through the family grapevine. Aunt Sarah called me. Uncle Tom sent a text. Even some of Melissa's relatives reached out. Mom was struggling. Several family members had pulled back from her. Aunt Sarah stopped calling for their weekly coffee dates. Uncle Tom told Dad he was disappointed in how Mom had handled things. Some of the cousins were asking questions about what really happened 15 years ago. Mom's carefully curated image as the perfect mother, the family matriarch, had cracked. People were seeing her differently now. Your mother's having a hard time, Dad told me during one of our careful phone conversations. We were rebuilding our relationship slowly, tentatively. She's not handling the fallout well. I didn't do this to hurt her, I said. I know, but she's lost something she valued, control over the family narrative. Part of me felt sad for her. Despite everything, she was still my mother. But I also knew I couldn't sacrifice my peace to protect her image. Has she said anything? I asked. About apologizing? Dad was quiet for a moment. No. She's not there yet. Maybe she never will be. I can't wait for her anymore, Dad. I can't keep putting my life on hold hoping she'll change. I understand, and I don't blame you. The truth was, Mom's reputation in the family had taken a hit, but she hadn't been ostracized. People still invited her to events, still included her in family gatherings. They just treated her with more caution now, more distance. She'd have to live with the consequences of her choices, just like I'd lived with the consequences of hers for 15 years. The difference was, my consequences were based on a lie. Hers were based on the truth. I'd worried that the family drama would affect my professional life. Some of Jason's colleagues had been at the dinner. A few of my clients had connections to my parents' social circle. But the opposite happened. 2 weeks after the wedding, one of my clients, a CEO whose company I'd helped with a merger, called me into his office. I heard about what happened at your brother's wedding, he said. My stomach dropped. I apologize if that reflects poorly on... He held up a hand. You stood up for yourself. You presented facts. You handled a difficult situation with professionalism and dignity. He leaned back in his chair. That takes courage. The kind of courage I want in my legal team. I blinked. Thank you. I'm recommending you for lead counsel on the Peterson acquisition. It's a big case, high profile, and I trust you to handle it. A colleague pulled me aside at a networking event. I heard what you went through with your family. I'm sorry that happened, but I'm glad you stood up for yourself. Too many people let family dynamics compromise their integrity. Even my managing partner commented, Foster, whatever's going on in your personal life, you're handling it well. Your work hasn't slipped. That's impressive. I realized something important. Standing up for myself hadn't damaged my reputation. If anything, it had strengthened it. People respected boundaries. They respected someone who could navigate difficult situations with grace and facts. The truth had protected me in ways I hadn't expected. My professional life wasn't just intact, it was stronger. I'd proven I could handle pressure, stand by my principles, and maintain my composure, even when everything was falling apart. Those were exactly the qualities my clients needed in an attorney. 3 months after the wedding, I sat in my apartment on a quiet Sunday morning, coffee in hand, looking out at the Boston skyline. I'd spent so much of my life running from that night 15 years ago, running from the guilt, from the shame, from the belief that I'd destroyed something precious and could never make it right. But the guilt had never been mine to carry. I'd built my entire adult identity around being the person who owed everyone, who had to prove her worth, who could never do enough to make up for her mistakes. Except there was no mistake. There was a mechanical failure, and a family who chose to let me believe I was responsible. The revelation hadn't magically fixed everything. I still had moments of doubt, still caught myself apologizing unnecessarily, still felt that old familiar pull toward guilt when my phone rang with my mother's name. But I was learning that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was self-respect. Learning that love shouldn't require you to accept abuse. Learning that family doesn't mean surrendering your truth to maintain someone else's comfort. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to earn love I already deserved, all the money I'd sent, trying to buy forgiveness for something I didn't do, all the apologies I'd made for existing. I wouldn't make that mistake again. The relationship with Mom might never heal. She hadn't apologized, hadn't acknowledged what she'd done. Maybe she never would. But I didn't need her apology anymore. I didn't need her approval. I had the truth. I had my integrity. I had relationships with family members who actually loved me without conditions. And I had something I hadn't felt since I was 17 years old: peace. Jason and I talked every week now. Real conversations, not the careful, guilt-laden exchanges we'd had for years. We met for dinner once a month when I drove down to Connecticut. "I've been thinking about the accident a lot," he told me over burgers one evening. I don't remember much from that night. I was 12, I was hurt, I was scared. But I do remember you holding my hand in the ambulance. You do? Yeah. You kept saying, it's okay, even though you were bleeding and crying. He looked at me. You were trying to protect me. Even then. I'm your big sister. That's my job. Mom made it seem like you were careless, reckless. But that's not who you are. That's not who you've ever been. We were building something new, something not based on guilt or obligation, but on genuine affection. Dad and I were working on our relationship too, slowly. He'd started therapy, which surprised me. "I need to understand why I stayed silent for so long," he explained. "Why I let your mother control the narrative." "I appreciate that, Dad. I can't undo the past, but I want to be better. For you, for Jason, for myself." Mom remained distant. We'd exchanged exactly 3 text messages since the wedding. Polite, brief, carefully neutral. I'd stopped waiting for her to change. Stopped hoping for the apology I knew wouldn't come. Instead, I'd set clear boundaries. I would attend family events. I would be civil, but I would leave immediately if she tried to manipulate or guilt me. No arguments, no explanations, just boundaries. And the remarkable thing? It worked. She'd tested them once, making a comment about family loyalty at Thanksgiving. I'd stood up, said goodbye to everyone else, and left. She hadn't tried again. So here's what I want you to know. If you're carrying guilt for something you didn't do, it's not your burden to carry. You don't owe anyone your peace. Not your parents, not your siblings, not anyone. I spent 15 years believing I was broken, believing I owed an unpayable debt, believing I had to earn love through constant apology and financial sacrifice. And it was all based on a lie. Not a lie I told, but a lie that was told about me. Setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish. It makes you strong. It makes you healthy. It makes you whole. If you're in a situation where someone is using guilt to control you, I want you to do something for me. Get the facts. Look at the evidence. Don't just accept the story you've been told, especially if that story makes you the villain. The truth will set you free. It won't always be comfortable. It might cost you relationships with people who prefer the lie, but it will give you something more valuable than approval: integrity. I'm still healing. I probably will be for a long time. The scars from 15 years of false guilt don't disappear overnight. But I'm free. I'm finally, genuinely free. I have a relationship with my brother that's based on love, not obligation. I have a career I'm proud of. I have boundaries that protect my peace. And I have the truth. That's worth more than $50,000. It's worth more than my mother's approval. It's worth everything. You deserve respect, even from the people who are supposed to love you most. Especially from them. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe. I share stories about boundaries, family dynamics, and finding your voice. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family? Or have you discovered a truth that changed everything? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. And remember, you deserve respect, even from the people who are supposed to love you most.